Hey guys, this is Erin. Today I'm going to be tackling the hot topic of abortion, or more specifically, the heartbeat bill. Many of you may have been seeing it pop up in your news feed about Alabama and Georgia recently passing the heartbeat bill. So, what does this mean? We're going to talk a little bit more about that and then talk about all the states that are involved. All right. So, the Heartbeat Protection Act. This bill was introduced into the House January 12th of 2017, and pretty much this bill makes it a federal crime for physicians to knowingly perform an abortion. It does provide an exemption for abortion that is necessary to save the life of a mother whose life is endangered, but only physically. So this includes any kind of physical disorder, illness, or condition that could potentially end the life of the mother. However, this does not include psychological or emotional illness. So a physician who performs an abortion in this state under this law is subject to criminal penalties, and this includes a fine, up to 5 years in prison, or both. However, a woman who undergoes an abortion may not be prosecuted for violating the provisions of this bill. So I did want to note that this information came directly from the government website, which I will be posting under my references. However, when you go in when I went in to do more research on the topic, there was a lot of people saying that women were going to be prosecuted, that if they went to another state to get it done, and they could potentially be charged when they got back to their home state if it was found out. Other statements were saying that physicians could possibly face up to 99 years in prison, which seems a little extensive. So I think the jury is still out, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics and how complicated the laws can get from state to state. So right now, this is kind of all up in the air, but this did again come from the government site, so I think this is in fact what's really happening, or what happened right now as of today. All right, so where do they get this heartbeat bill? So what exactly are the specifics of it? So pretty much 16 states have passed and or trying to pass a ban on abortion after a doctor can detect what they call a fetal heartbeat in the womb. So usually this is about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, and many women really don't even know they're pregnant 6 weeks in. So I think this is where a lot of the controversy is coming from. So other states follow the standard by the Supreme Court's Roe decision in 1973, the Roe versus Wade case, where abortion is legal until the fetus reaches, I would say, viability. So I say viability in quotations because, again, we're going to talk about the specifics of state to state and how things can differ. But usually it's between 24 and 28 weeks. But again, it just depends on the state that you're in. So here's a picture, a visual of all the states that are either trying or have filed for the bill for the 6-week abortion ban, or have already signed it into law. This is not a completed, updated map, only because Alabama, as you can see here, is not highlighted in blue, and they have just recently signed it into law. So the laws that have been signed, however, have not gone into effect yet as of now, as of 2019, have triggered protests across the country. And ever since Roe versus Wade, abortion in general has caused a great division in politics, in families, in the United States in general, where you're either pro-choice or pro-life. And so I think that we're just seeing the reemergence of this again, and it's coming to light again because of the heartbeat bill and all the states that are trying to enact it. Okay. So again, I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how abortion laws vary from state to state. When I was doing my research on this, I found it very confusing and complicated, depending on what state you're in. will depend on the specific regulations and policies that are there for abortion. And so I'm going to post this under my references so that you guys can look at it. But it's this really big chart that does go state to state and give you an idea of exactly what the laws are. But here are just these are just some topics that I wanted to talk about that they touch on. So there's a big variation in gestational limit. So depending on the state, it might be illegal to get an abortion at 18 weeks versus 20 weeks versus 6 weeks. Then there's partial birth. So this seems to be more, I don't want to say popular, but I did see this a lot more in the states where they prohibit late-term abortion, which is usually after the first trimester, going into the second trimester. Funding was interesting because some states did pay for medically necessary abortions through Medicaid. However, there was other states that would prohibit any state funds to go towards any type of abortion. There were some states where physicians were allowed to refuse to participate in abortion, and some states where the physicians were not allowed to refuse. State mandated counseling. So I thought this was interesting. There were, I would say, quite a good number of states that mandated that women would be given counseling before the abortion took place. And I actually thought this was pretty good. I think any woman who's having to make this decision would need some sort of counseling before and after. In general, it's difficult for anybody to make that decision. And then in other states, there's a waiting period. So if somebody wanted to have an abortion, they would have to wait 24 hours after being counseled in between that and when the procedure was performed. And then parental involvement. So this is where anybody under the age of 18 would have to have a parent or both parents involved before the minor could have an abortion. So what's happening currently? So with all the confusion, there's all these terms floating around. Everyone's presuming things, but right now, the latest bans have not yet been put into effect, and all are expected to face lengthy court battles. Abortion does remain legal right now in every state, as of now, of course, with the specific regulations and policies that we talked about, specific to that state. And state laws that restrict abortions are almost always going to be challenged in the court. And again, this is because of the 1973 landmark Supreme Court ruling, Roe versus Wade. So it still remains law of the land for deciding if those state laws are constitutional. Again, there's so many questions, and I found this to be very confusing, but an introduced bill is not a passed bill, and a passed bill is not necessarily signed or enacted. So it's these issues that are causing so much confusion right now over abortion rights. In fact, it's gotten so crazy, more than 350 pieces of legislation that would restrict abortion access have been introduced in the states across the country this year. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about pro-choice or pro-life and just some arguments on both sides. I feel that people can sometimes take, depending on how they feel about it, but sometimes take a little bit from both sides. So I don't think it's a black or white thing. I think there's a lot of gray area. But I did just want to kind of point out what both sides feel like. Again, I'm not trying to give my insight today or how I feel. However, I just want everyone to kind of get an idea of looking at it from both sides of the spectrum, because I think both sides have really good reasons on why they believe what they believe. So for pro-choice, we have arguments for abortion. Sometimes it's kinder to abort the baby if the child will be disabled or really ill. So maybe that child would die soon after birth, or the child would be, would be born with some sort of chromosomal issue that will cause them to be pretty much disabled their whole life. Sometimes having the baby would put the mother's life at risk. Okay, so what if the woman who's pregnant got raped? Should that be considered? Especially, I think it's important to think about the new bill that's being passed, and the fact that some of these states aren't really taking into consideration some of these issues. The woman has a right to choose what happens to her own bodies. All babies have the right to be loved and cared for, and sometimes that woman may not be able to provide this. If it's made illegal, women will turn back to street abortion, so that is something that I read a lot about, and the fact that a lot of women are dying because they are having illegal abortions on the streets or in the back homes of somebody's house, and how it can cause a lot of problems all over the world. And then last but not least, a fetus is not a real human being. All right, so what are the arguments against abortion? So pro-life. There are always loving parents who want to adopt unwanted babies, which is very true. We have a lot of people who can't have children and would love the opportunity to adopt a baby that needs a home. Just because the child is disabled doesn't mean they shouldn't get a chance at life. Again, this is really, I think this makes sense. I have a friend whose brother is disabled, but he has a great life. He loves his life. He's got a great family. And so, he got a chance to live, and he's living it. An embryo should have the same rights as any other human being. Life begins at conception. All life is special, and nobody has the right to kill. Abortion can leave emotional scars for the mother and the family. Two wrongs don't make a right. I'm not really sure about that one. Some babies have survived at less than 25 weeks. And it has also, another argument, has become a form of birth control. So again, these are just some things to think about. I'm not asking you guys to tell me if you're pro-choice or pro-life, but I did want to bring up the subject and just kind of give you guys some things on either side and how each side is feeling. Alright, so here's some questions to think about. How do you feel about the heartbeat bill? Do you think it's too extreme, or is it morally just? Maybe you fall somewhere in the middle. What do you think the benefits of passing the heartbeat bill would be, and what do you think would the negatives be? I think it's important to look at it from both sides and to think about what the goods and the bads would be. So again, I'm not trying to create a debate here on whether abortion is good or bad. I'm really just trying to focus on the heartbeat bill and just trying to get an idea of what you guys think about it. So what are your thoughts? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say.